Okay, I think we've got everyone here. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll get underway. Thank you very much. We begin with the affirmation. Tēnā tātou katoa. We seek wisdom, understanding, insights into the views and circumstances of others, strength to seek what we believe in, humility to accept the combined decisions of others, patience, good humour at all times, tolerance and courtesy while working in the best interests of our community. We come first to apologies. There have been none received, as I think we have a full house here today. Councillor Richard Hills is somewhere here. He's being interviewed outside, so he'll be with us shortly. I move that we accept the apologies, as seconded to Councillor Walker. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Carried. Item 3, declaration of interest. Are there any members of the governing body this morning that have an interest or a perception of conflict of interest that they need to declare? Not. We'll move on to the confirmation of minutes, the first meeting of this term of council. So there are no minutes for confirmation. There are no petitions. There is no public input. There is no local board input. There are no extraordinary items that I've been made aware of. Item number 9 and 10 are the statutory declarations by myself and by all of the councillors, which we have done on Friday night. So we come to item 11, and I think the focus of our governing body meeting today is the maiden speeches by 4 of our new councillors. Can I just say very briefly, I'm delighted to have our 4 new councillors on the council with us today. They bring freshness, they bring competency, they bring experience, as all of them former local board chairs, and I think that each one of you will add to the quality of this body and the decisions we make. So congratulations to all of our newly elected members, and can I say also congratulations to everyone around this table who has been re-elected. The maiden speeches are generally around about 10 minutes, so I'm presuming that all of the new members of the governing body have been informed of that. I have a time clock here, but I would be very reluctant to intervene. But if you take it to an extreme, I'll be forced to. But can I, once again, just congratulate all of you. The maiden speeches will be in the order of Councillor Pippa Coombe, Councillor Angela Dalton, Councillor Shane Henderson, and Councillor Tracy Mulholland. Can I call on Councillor Pippa Coombe to complete her photo opportunity and to deliver her maiden speech. Councillor Coombe.
E nā mate, moi mai, ka hoki ki tēnei au, e te whare e tu nei, e te wahi taunga nei nā Ngāti Whātua, e nā mana whenua me nā matawaka, e te koro mātua, e nā mana e nā reo, e nā hoi whā, tēnā koutou, ko te kaupapa o tēnei rā, ka mihi whānui ki a koutou katoa, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Greetings to everyone gathered here today. I acknowledge mana whenua and the land we stand on. I acknowledge this house of democracy. I acknowledge the founders of Auckland from the earliest of times and remember those who have passed. I acknowledge the Mayor, and all my council colleagues, friends, family, staff of the Auckland whānau, and those tuning in on the live stream. A big, warm mihi to you all. Sorry, I wasn't going to get teary this early on in my speech, but one thing I guarantee, there's going to be a few tears. It is a great honour to give a maiden speech as the newly elected councillor for Waitemata and Gulf Ward, representing the beating heart of Tamaki Makaurau and the stunning Gulf Islands. An area contributing 20% of Auckland's GDP, of tremendous population growth, increasing diversity, major cultural institutions, world-class places of learning with residents who experience everything from dense urban vertical living to off-grid rural lifestyles. I acknowledge my predecessor, Mike Lee, long-serving councillor and former chair of the ARC. Among many achievements, he was instrumental in the renaissance of Auckland's public transport and the expansion of the regional parks network. Passing the torch graciously is not always easy, and I wish him and Jenny well. It has been a privilege to have been part of Auckland Council right from the exciting but at times daunting beginning in 2010. I acknowledge Auckland's first Mayor, Len Brown, whose massive contribution has really yet to be written about, and for also making those early days a lot of fun. I pay tribute to my many colleagues who over the years have tried hard to make the Super City experiment work for the best interests of our communities. It is very timely for the CCO review announced by the Mayor to examine the part of the governance model that was deliberately set up to corporatise Auckland and remove democratic decision-making. I come to the governing body with the experience of 9 years on the Waitemata local board, working for inclusive, accessible, safe, healthy, connected, sustainable, resilient communities for everyone to enjoy. It has been a challenging and immensely satisfying and enjoyable time, and I'd like to acknowledge my former colleagues on the Waitemata local board, Vernon Tava and Christopher Dempsey and Cheryl Chambers, who are here today. I'd like to think that I bring to the big table the ability to get stuff done, make the most of modest budgets, work alongside community and business organisations, always with a commitment to genuine partnership with mana whenua. There is still much to learn, and I thank everyone who's supported me on this journey. Former Chair Cheryl Chambers' contribution to establishing the Waitemata local board and setting the foundations for strong local decision-making across council can't be underestimated. Remarkably, as chair and deputy chair combo over 9 years, we never once had a bust-up and no tears. So I thank him for his support, guidance, and for becoming such a strong advocate for making Auckland a great place to cycle, even though he never has any interest of getting on a bicycle. It's easy to let go. It's a little bit like handing over my baby knowing that the local board is in good hands under new chair Richard Northey and with an impressive team. A shout out to the wonderful, committed local board staff, perhaps watching on the live stream, but I know they're meant to be focused on the local board workshop today. They support the board so professionally and effectively. It goes with the territory to receive a few insults and the odd nasty comment. Supposedly one of these is that I work well with bureaucracy and management. I think that means you, Mr. Town, and the team. Absolutely, I will continue to work positively to develop positive relationships and collaborate with everyone who is committed to working for and serving the best interests of Auckland. My role is to ask difficult questions and to know when to challenge advice, but I make a commitment to do that always with kindness, empathy, and respect. There is no room for bullying around this table. But just a warning, I do have a resting bitch face that I just can't help. I'd like to acknowledge my fellow class of 2019, Angela, Tracy and Shane. As former board chairs, I believe we will bring to this table an approach of collaboration, cheerfulness and working together that we have experienced at the Chairs Forum. I know we are all here to bring our A-team, A-game. Actually, forget A's and B's. I'm calling it now that I am Team C, Team Collaboration. Wayne has already asked to join my team. You did? It's collaboration. You said you're Mr. Collaboration. Like everyone around this table, I was elected independently. What I do hold as a badge of pride is that I'm part of the City Vision whānau and joined Kathy Casey as a City Vision councillor. Like Kathy, I don't belong to a political party, and just to put the record straight, there is no party master. At least I'm yet to meet him or her, if you know where they're hiding out, Kathy, and I've yet to find the so-called back room where the deals are meant to be taking place. Desley, you might know where that is. I've no idea myself. There is no backroom deal. Backroom for deals. We are a progressive coalition with shared values of social justice, commitment to the living wage, outstanding public transport, environmental restoration, action on climate change, ownership of public assets and a real say for local communities. We are upfront about what we stand for because we believe our role is far more than what we are as individuals. I respect that around this table we've all come from different political traditions of the legacy councils, but the reality is that I would not be here without being part of City Vision. It was the only way for progressives to break through the CNH stronghold over the old Auckland City Council. I acknowledge and thank all those who have supported my election. Robert Gallagher, Chair of City Vision, Jeremy Greenbook-Hild, my campaign manager and the wider support team of volunteers, including on Waiheke, and the great team of candidates I stood alongside. In many ways, my path here started early on with community activism, volunteering and community building. Like 39% of Aucklanders, I was born overseas. In fact, in London and raised in a post-war new town called Emil Hempstead. Emil Hempstead, where my politics was shaped from a young age by the threat of nuclear war, the toxicity of apartheid and the rise of Thatcherism. My family emigrated to New Zealand just after I turned 14. Surprisingly, for that difficult teenage period, it was a move I embraced. I did, happily, I don't know why that makes me cry, but yes, I did embrace it. And my version of this family history is that it was actually my idea, right, Mum? But I'm so glad we did come here. I immediately felt at home, living in Ponsonby and going to Auckland Girls Grammar. These are tears of happiness because I do feel so lucky, fortunate that I came here at 14 and one of my first friends is here, Sharon, who's really the brains behind MOTAT, where my interest in service and activism were acknowledged. It's also where my North London accent was beaten out of me at Auckland Girls. I can't even do the accent anymore, but I arrived very North London. Miss Pountney was my principal at AGS, and I'm so pleased you're here. I'm now allowed to call Miss Pountney Charmaine, and she's, as the circle of life, we are now even neighbours in Grey Lynn. In the fifth form, I was one of the founding members of the Auckland City Youth Council, established under then Mayor Dame Kath Tizard. Many of the issues that we sought to bring a voice to continue to this day, and now with increased urgency led by the School Strike for Climate. I was fortunate to spend my last year of school as an AFS student in Peru, and I'd like to say saludos a toda mi familia de Perú y también de Cuba, incluido mi ex-esposo Nelson. And I also got to complete a law degree at Auckland University. I first experienced what it was like to brutally lose an election when I stood for the OUSA exec and came second to last, far behind now Mayor of Whangarei, Hamish McDowell. My community activism continued during a 15-year legal career. During this time, my dad, Mel Coombe, was killed in a car crash at the age of 49. Many years later, and now as a Vision Zero campaigner, I've come to think of my dad's death not just as a family tragedy, but also as an example of why the Safe Systems approach to creating a forgiving road network is so vital. I applaud Auckland Transport for moving ahead with the slower speeds bylaw work, and I will continue to be a tireless advocate for road safety and transport choice. It was redundancy from an in-house legal job at Vector 10 years ago that really kick-started my political career and allowed me to pursue my passions and to throw myself into what I call being a community busybody, with cycle advocacy, sustainability as chair of the Greyland Farmers Market, trustee of Greyland 2030 and organiser of major climate action events. And I'm still working with the many fabulous people that I met through that time, and I give thanks to all the encouragement I received to pursue politics, in particular Suzanne Kendrick and Barb Cuthbert. The challenge for this term cannot be overstated, councillors. Bold leadership is needed like never before. There can be no more business as usual. Our agreed 1.5 target requires urgent climate action in the next 10 years. Everything has to be seen through the lens of the climate emergency, and climate action must be at the heart of all our decision making. I'm honoured to have the Deputy Chair role on the Environment and Climate Change Committee, working with Councillor Hills as Chair. We have big shoes to fill to continue the work led by Penny Hulse, and I thank her for her tremendous support as well to become a councillor. All of us as councillors need to be focused and prepared for the challenge ahead. Decisions must be made for the long term and not just the short term. We must recognise the interrelations between issues: climate, water, coastal risks, public transport, the city centre transformation, economic development and more, and the broad benefits we can deliver for all of our communities across Auckland if we take an integrated approach. I know that you have humoured me with a bit of extra time, but there are a few important acknowledgements that I would like to end with. I'd like to acknowledge the Mayor, a Koromatua, tēnā koe. He is a good man with a warm heart who works incredibly hard for all of us. I would just like to see him driving a little bit less, getting out. I know it's an e-car, but it would be great to experience Auckland more other than from behind the wheel of a car, and actually maybe on foot and bike to experience our communities.
Motorbike?
The same, scooter maybe. I think it's hugely symbolic that both the Mayor and Councillor Fletcher have spoken publicly about having grandchildren born in the week after the election. There's been a reset on a fresh start to work together for future generations. I'd like to acknowledge now my partner Paul, who's slipped in a little bit late. Forgive him for that. Paul, who's also known as the Dennis Thatcher of Auckland politics, self-described. You won't see him at much, but he's a constant support behind the scenes. Please forgive me for always having an excuse not to do housework. Paul's lack of interest in being my plus one is great news for my wonderful mum, who's always up for everything. Thank you to you both, my family and my wider urban whānau. In the last week, I've had the opportunity to attend the inaugural meetings of the local boards in my ward, Aotea, Great Barrier, Waitemata and Waiheke. And as Councillor Watson knows, I do confess to missing the plane to Great Barrier for my first meeting there, but I just made it in time by catching a very small little plane. I look forward to building strong relationships with the 3 local boards, serving my entire ward and working hard to fulfil the aspirations of all Aucklanders. There's a lot to get on with, and I'm here for it. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Kia ora.
Thank you very much, Councillor Coombe, for setting a very high standard with the first speech. And it's my great pleasure now to invite to the lectern Councillor Angela Dalton from Manarewa, Papakura.
Thank you. Thanks, Pippa. Hi, Ba. Ko te amarangi ki mua, ko te hapai o ki muri. Te hei moeora, ko te wihi kia i ahoa. Nāna na mea katoa. Ko au Manarewa Papakura, ko Manarewa Papakura aho. Ki te mana whenua o Manarewa Papakura. Kia koutou katoa o Manarewa Papakura. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. I'd just like to acknowledge mana whenua, the Mayor, the Deputy Mayor, and my colleagues around the table. My opening whakatau was given to me to use today by my friend Rangi McLean. Translated into English, it says, "Leaders don't advance forward without the support of those behind them." To lead from the front, strong leaders require continuous support from the rear. And it is a reminder that we didn't get here alone. We carry the trust and the confidence of residents, friends and family from our respective rohi. We must remember those who lifted us up along the way, so they remain with us along this entire journey. I'd like to briefly acknowledge a few of those people. My family first and foremost, always. Mum, Grant, and of course my 4 children, who have endured 6 election campaigns, traversing their teenage years to their adult years. And colleagues, you will be well aware that the toll this job takes on our families, particularly in campaign time. So all I can say to them is thank you again. Just as our campaign was to kick into second gear of 5 gears, my gran passed away in June in her 98th year. And I only mention this because she was one of my strongest supporters. And the day she left, the campaign changed for me. It never ceased to amaze me, after years of being told to watch what I'm doing, she cared less and less about what people thought about her outlook on life with each passing year. So that meant that my time spent with her was empowering, and it gave me some strong perspective. I'd like to thank both the Manarewa and Papakura action teams who worked diligently, followed advice and kept their eye on the ball and on the end game. And to my running mate Daniel Newman, who found a whole new sphere of tolerance during this year's election campaign. Our 6th campaign together, our toughest campaign together, but it resulted in the election of 20 of our 22 candidates. Thank you, Daniel, for your unconditional loyalty, your friendship, and I'm pleased to be able to sit here next to you now at the governing body table. Finally, I would like to pay tribute to Sir John Walker, who held the Manarewa Papakura seat before his retirement from local government. Sir John gave many years of service to Manarewa and Papakura, and many more to Manarewa in his role as councillor for Manukau City Council. Sir John is one of the most resilient and determined people I have met. His passion for ensuring that every child has the opportunity to succeed underpins everything he does. I would just like to acknowledge Anne Candy, who is here today. Thank you for travelling in, Anne, to listen to my maiden speech. Newly elected to the Manarewa Local Board, but of course previous Deputy Mayor of Manukau City Council and a mentor. Thank you, Anne. Congratulations to my colleagues who have joined me from Local Board land in the move across to regional governance. Pippa, Shane and Tracy, we've worked together well on the Chairs Forum, and Shane with you on the Governance Framework Political Working Party. Holding a mutual respect for each other's perspective, even though we come from diverse political backgrounds, it gave us a safe place for debate and discussion without divisiveness. Being open-minded to alternative views didn't change our personal positions, but it did enable for rich debate and discussion. The leadership from the Chairs Forum is outstanding in achieving consensus for the greater good, and I look forward to continuing that work ethic with you. I appreciate what a privilege it is to be elected to serve as a councillor for Auckland, and I have been forewarned by a number of my colleagues of the workload, the debates, the challenges, the politics, and I will only appreciate the intensity of that through experiencing it myself. I'm up for it. Having served this council on the local board since the inception of the Super City, 7 as local board chair and 2 as deputy chair. And while the challenges might be different, my experience gives me a tremendous insight into council and the CCO machinery. I support the review of the CCOs. I have experienced through my previous governance role the unintended consequences of policy settings by the governing body and the interpretation of it as it is operationalised by the CCOs. I don't see an obvious governance relationship between the governing body and the full boards of the CCOs, and there is simply not one with the local boards. Therefore, I support a councillor sitting on the CCO boards, and I look forward to all councillors working together to develop the terms of reference for this review. A priority for me is to remember the role of the local boards, our partners in shared governance. It is very clear to me the efficiencies to be gained, the opportunities for communities enabled when local boards are given equal access to quality of advice, input into policy development at its inception, and are geared up by the organisation to fulfil their legislative roles as governors in their local areas and shared governors in the Super City. I know the chairs are very happy to see more previous chairs now sitting at the governing body to join the ones that are already here. The 4 of us elected this time round bring a combined understanding of working with policy implementation, and it is my view that our value add will be through asking the right questions to challenge policy that could marginalise communities through those unintended consequences, as happened with some aspects of the waste minimisation policy. My ward has the highest population of Māori in Auckland. Outcomes for Māori is another priority of mine. Over the years, I have received hundreds of reports to my board meetings that have a substandard commentary under the Māori Impact Statement. I will continue to reach out to mana whenua and Matuaka, as I have done in the past, for their advice. The Mayor has encouraged me to work with Te Waka Angamoa and form a relationship with the IMSB to support my kaupapa to improve Māori outcomes into decision-making. One of the key strategic issues for this council is Māori identity and wellbeing. I hope to add value and influence to how council responds to the issues identified in the strategic briefing. There is also unfinished business from the last term that I'm looking forward to being a part of completing, such as the stadium strategy. Another of the strategic issues in the strategic briefing is how we are going to pay our way to achieve the outcomes in the Auckland Plan. And to that end, I'm pleased to be on the Value for Money Committee chaired by Councillor Desley Simpson. Process improvement based on lean principles holds a strong interest for me. I bring that to the table as one of my values to your committee, Desley. Well, in my election campaign, I promoted the fact that there has never been a woman from the south of Auckland elected to the governing body since the Super City began in 2010. And by the south, I mean the areas represented by Councillors Collins, Philipina, Newman and Cashmore. The election of a woman to join these 4 fine men was achieved this election, but not only that, the governing body now has 9 women elected to it, a record. So fun times ahead, but perhaps not as fun as Wellington City Council, who I think have 8 women and 3 men. Skews the balance a little bit. Women's participation in politics is evidence to be critical for the development of inclusive, responsive and transparent democracies. We need policies that are designed by women, focused on women and executed by women, not at the expense of men or instead of men, but alongside and with men. And I'm looking forward to working with all of you as we strive to achieve balance for Auckland. I am pragmatic in my approach to governance. I am also forensic when required, which may get more than a little frustrating for some of my colleagues. Perhaps the chair of the CEO Review Committee might get a little frustrated by that. I see a place for disruption, but not a place for division, although I accept it is unavoidable in a political environment such as this one. I take advice from the officers of council, and I also seek independent advice when I need it. I will aim for unity and consensus, but not at the cost of the people who elected me or the values that I hold fast to. In closing, I would like to thank the voters of Manarewa and Papakura. I come to this role with an indisputable mandate from you. I'm here to serve you and bring your priorities to the governing body through your respective local boards. I will be available directly to you alongside Councillor Newman, as constituent work is a fundamental shared value of ours as politicians. And my final comment is this: if we are to have an Auckland that is inclusive, that starts right here with leadership that is inclusive. We are stronger together. Ngā mihi nui, matawa.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dalton. That's maintaining the standard of the first maiden speech. And now it's my pleasure to introduce to the lectern Councillor Shane Henderson, Ward Councillor for Henderson Massey, alongside Councillor Cooper. Goodness, it's hard to follow those guys. Wow.
E ngā mana, e ngā reo, I rau rangatira mā, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors, and congratulations again on your success. I'm proud to enter my first term on this council full of hope and excited for the opportunities we have to improve the lives of many in our city. I begin this morning by saying, e hara taki toa I te toa takitahi, e ngāri he toa takitini. My strength is not that of a single warrior, but of many. I'm here today through the work and support of my family, my friends, and my community. I want to acknowledge my predecessor, Penny Hulse. What better role model than that? I want to acknowledge Sir Bob Harvey, a mentor to me and one of my heroes. These people epitomise what being a Westie really is. I want to thank the people of Waitakere. There is no greater honour than the chance to represent the hopes and dreams of people living in the land you love. I do not take that honour lightly. I will work every day to repay that show of faith and try and make you proud. There are many others to thank. From my grandmother, who took me in as a young boy doing it tough and raised me as her own. Sorry. My friends and supporters, my campaign team that worked hard for me to be here in this room, to my partner and children here, my love for you knows no bounds. It is these people that drove me to seek office for the first time in 2013 and still inspire me as I plan to work on the huge challenges that face Aucklanders. I feel there's no greater challenge to the future of our communities that we know that are threatened by the forces of climate change. There are also no greater opportunities to take action than right now. We have a choice to improve lives at this table. Declaring a climate emergency is no small thing. It could be the defining moments in the future of our city. It is a call to action, a chance to do something positive and exciting. We can share a vision for Auckland in these 3 years where we're inspiring and leading solutions that will save communities as we know them. There is no doubt we have a problem here and the effects are happening right now. In 2017, Newland Town Centre was underwater after a freak storm. A storm no one in that community had ever seen before. Coastal erosion is already an issue in the seaside communities of our city. Food security is threatened through warmer seas and increased food demands. We are already seeing displaced people worldwide through climate change's effects. It is clear that no one can be truly safe from a significantly warmer world, but it is also true that climate change disproportionately affects low-income communities. It will slam those who do not have the insulation of wealth to protect them from its worst effects. Any attempts to address carbon emissions must also consider social justice and bring people up to a level where every community has an opportunity to get ahead. A sustainable future is the vision of our generation. Not only will sustainability mitigate climate change, it will also improve the communities we live in and make them better places to live, work and enjoy. I am proud to say that Council is showing leadership on this issue by developing a strategy that puts sustainability at the forefront of everything we do. We will inspire people through large infrastructure investment that helps reduce congestion and transport-related emissions. We will continue to invest in our environment and water quality initiatives. We will encourage housing and business that is sustainable and adds to our communities. Public transport needs to be a priority in this term. Private vehicle transport in Auckland was responsible for 37.6% of all emissions last year. Households and businesses are doing their bit to mitigate and reduce their climate footprint, but all that good work is being undone when many parts of our city do not have proper public transport. In places like Massey and Te Atatu, it doesn't matter how much money you have in your bank account, you're living in transport poverty. You're stuck on Donbuck Road and Te Atatu Road in your car every day when you could be spending that time with your family. Reducing our carbon footprint also means more local jobs closer to where people live. Inspiring work is happening in our central city, but we must also focus on our suburban centres across Auckland as well. With beautiful local centres providing more jobs and housing, with great parks, playgrounds and libraries, this is the kind of sustainable city we want to leave to our children. I'm excited by the possibility and the opportunity to be part of a leadership team on the Finance and Performance Committee in this term and acknowledge our Chair, Deathley. Looking forward to working with you. Everything we do needs to be through the lens of sustainability, and it's in this role that I feel I can contribute. It's a big responsibility, and it will require a measured approach. It will need responsible stewardship of our rates and debt funding, balanced by the levels of investment we need to fund our current and future populations. I hope in this talk I've outlined some of the exciting potential we have in the 3 years to make Auckland a better place to live and to do it together. This potential doesn't get realised without working together. I would urge my council colleagues to form strong partnerships, work as one team, and let's do the job we're elected to do. Waiho e te toi poto, kaua e te toi roa. Let us keep close together, not far apart. That is the Westie way. I would also urge my colleagues to focus on giving greater power to communities and to local boards. When communities drive change themselves, that's when it really lasts. I'll finish this morning on a personal note. Through the campaign, we welcomed my son James into the world. Down the back there. He's being very well behaved. It's good. One day, James will ask me what I did for him here at this table. Well, I'll dedicate these 3 years, and however many more the people of Waitakere bestow upon me, to answering that question. Thank you, Waitakere.
Thank you very much, Councillor Henderson, and a really strong note that you finished on as well as we think about what we're doing around this table and who we're doing it for. Last but not least, can I welcome to the lectern Councillor Tracy Mulholland from the Faux Ward.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, te whānau. I say te whānau because that is who we are and what we stand for. Welcome today. Thank you for being here. And may I take this opportunity to also strongly acknowledge our mana whenua, iwi, our Pacific friends, and our communities, our diverse communities. I'd also like to welcome those watching online, and may I say, due to an illness with my mother, I hope that she is able to listen today, and I stand for the good values that they set for me. May I also take the opportunity to acknowledge Mayor Goff and our Deputy. Councillors, fabulous councillors, when I sat and listened to the maiden speeches of the others, I look around the room and I have great respect and have had a long history with a lot of people in this room. So may I acknowledge all of you for your hard mahi and what you have done for your communities. It is outstanding. I'd also like to acknowledge my friends, because I don't actually have any family whatsoever in Auckland. So sometimes without a suitable husband or children, I say suitable, I had an unsuitable one. Although he is a fabulous guy, I must say, and did a lot of work for the campaign. I acknowledge supporters, but another large group of people I would like to acknowledge is the staff. And I have been a council officer, so there is no hiding that. I worked at Manukau and I had a great experience working at Manukau. It was part of the best time of my career. This will be the next best stage. It was with great joy, and I think of Alf and others, and it was a real pleasure to work alongside the community there. And you certainly build up a lot of love in that environment. So to the staff, thank you for everything you do. And also to the media, thank you for all the lovely words you said about me. Long may that continue. And to the team CNR, thank you. So I'd also like to acknowledge those that did support me in my selection as councillor for the Faux. I do want to congratulate you as elected members, and it is going to be a pleasure working alongside you for the betterment of Auckland. I do also want to acknowledge those that ran and were not successful. I want to thank you for your work and all that you have done over many years in this community of Auckland. I take this responsibility incredibly seriously, as do you all at this table. And I am dedicated, and I don't know if there's a level of, because when you don't have a good husband to go home to, and you have a lot more time. So I plan on spending a lot of time here, and it has been a pleasure to come in to the office and work alongside you. Our city requires great leadership, and it requires excellence in governance, as my previous professor would tell me. And I look around the room and know that those skills are here, and you are here because you have all of the people standing behind you. And our aim should always be betterment for the community, listening to others, creating an environment for people to live in harmony, and enabling an environment where people can happily and joyfully live their lives and achieve their goals. In our working and professional lives, one of the things that I have learned is relationships are the key to a successful life. And no matter our circumstances, people, without doubt, are the key. He tangata, he tangata, he tangata. Having worked in the public sector, of which I have already referred to, not only in Manukau, but I worked for Waitakere City Council. And I acknowledge the time spent, and I certainly acknowledge Councillor Cooper and others who I had the pleasure to work alongside. You are outstanding councillors then, alongside Councillor Hulse and others, and you remain outstanding councillors. I also worked as an investment champion for ATEED, and that was a fantastic opportunity to learn the value in those environments of public service and the need for effective, efficient service to community, and of course my big one, value for money. So I acknowledge the representation on the committee of value for money. It is really important to our residents, and I also want to acknowledge our aged community here because they had a lot to say to me during the campaign, and I'm very pleased and proud to be serving the aged community as well. We do have a critical role in providing the social and physical infrastructure that our people need, and around this table we make good, sound fiscal decisions, and I am looking forward to that work continuing. Excellence in local and regional economic growth and supporting Auckland businesses to be inclusive and world class are important. To me, micro and macroeconomic factors have an impact on our cities and our lives. We need to ensure good economic development outcomes to support this world-class city that we live in. I refer now to one of those projects that we have worked on as a team, and that is the New Lynn Transit Oriented Development Project, a leading transport project for not only the Whau, but for Tamaki Makaurau and, I believe, the whole of Aotearoa. This project continues to be of benefit to the community and is a great exemplar of a live, work, play environment. And I see that, the TOD, as a role model for the type of development that Auckland may need in the future. So great, well-planned, truly livable areas are very important if our towns and communities are to thrive, and therefore the people thrive. So I'm here today because I see opportunities exist in our communities, and the need for us to chant more fairness, more equity, more investment, more safety, more public transport, more respect for our diverse communities, our seniors, and more accountability. We need council's infrastructure and services to meet the growing needs of our people and businesses. We need to feel safe in public spaces and using our services. Auckland has grown, and it is an outstanding, fabulous city, and I am proud to live in Auckland. And coming from the Waikato, yes, I do get called a Jaffa, but I am proud of this fabulous city that we all serve. We are at a crossroads with infrastructure, and we must acknowledge climate change and the provision for transport, housing, and those major infrastructure projects. I do want to acknowledge Councillor Henderson commenting to the New Lynn floods because I lived through that, and I want to acknowledge the staff that did the great work. It was particularly frightening when I went into my first term. So that is a reality. We need to look at our infrastructure. I, alongside other previous local board chairs, are proud to be serving, and I do want to acknowledge the fabulous local board chairs, now councillors. They have done an outstanding job, and we did work incredibly well together. So I want to tautoko what Councillor Dalton has said. It is also important that we understand our history, and we listen carefully to the communities, and we invest carefully, and we must meet the expectations of that society and community that we serve. We need to take Aucklanders along on the journey, and although not all decisions that we make around the council table will be to everybody's taste, some decisions we know are hard, and it is inevitable that we will need to work together to make and take appropriate decision making, and I am up for that challenge. I am here to make a positive, workable, collaborative contribution to this fabulous team of councillors and staff and people serving. It is a pleasure and a joy to be here, but I see that we must progress in certain ways because Aucklanders do rely on collaboration and excellence in governance and best practice models. For Aucklanders to be successful, we must deliver for them, the people. And this is why I call you to join me and say more, and more, but with value for money. Ngā mihi nui atua, kia ora tātou, te whānau.
On behalf of all of the councillors and myself that were previously around this table, can I offer my sincere thanks to the 4 new members of the governing body, all of whom gave fantastic speeches. I think we see council at its best where people talk about their hopes and dreams, the things that motivate them to do public service, and it reminds all of us what we are here to do. I said before introducing the councillors that we would benefit from their experience, their competency, and we certainly will. But we'll also benefit from the passion and the emotion that councillors showed in giving their maiden speeches. And it's good to have some of that emotion here because that's what we're here about. You know, we do a lot of nuts and bolts work, but it is about the future and what we can create, the fantastic city that we can contribute towards. And somebody acknowledged that both Councillor Fletcher and I had grandkids born a week after the election. Probably should have been a week before, actually. But and also to acknowledge Councillor Henderson and James. That's pretty special. And James was there and was much better behaved than my granddaughter, whom I referred to in my inaugural speech. I'd like to acknowledge also that the gender composition of this council has changed towards greater balance. Of our 20 councillors, now 45% are women, and I think that that's positive. Nobody elected because they were women, but simply recognising their competency and their skill and to get that better balance. I'd like to also acknowledge those who have left. We had the chance to farewell Sir John Walker and Penny Hulse, who are both fine councillors. The nature of politics is that some of our colleagues we never get the chance to farewell. But I would like to thank both former Councillor Ross Clow and former Councillor Mike Lee for their service over many years. It is an adversarial arena that we work in, and there are winners and there are losers. But let us acknowledge for a moment the huge contribution that those 2 members that we never had the chance to farewell have made over time. Yeah, let's have a round of applause. I will put the motion shortly, which is on the screen ahead of you, which is to receive the speeches, both my inaugural speech on Friday night and the 4 speeches given by our new members of the governing body. They will be part of the record of council. And I think if, sometime in the future when a historian looks back and tries to understand what moved us around this table, those will be relevant reference points to what this council is about and what we're striving to achieve. Much of what was in the content of councillors' speeches followed similar lines. It was about the importance of climate change and the environment that sustains us, and this being the moment in time when we have to turn declarations into action. It was about the fact that we need responsiveness and accountability and how we can improve the structure of council and particularly our CCOs. And finally about creating the infrastructure that we need to match the growth of this city that is moving forward and growing at unprecedented levels. Can I finish with a comment I picked up from the first of the speeches from Councillor Coombs, where she talked about the need for collaboration, cheerfulness and working together. And that was a nice way of summarising the affirmation we make at the start. And Councillor Mulholland, I think you ended up with a similar theme. And I think, when we look at what the public expects of us, yes, they expect us to have different views and values, and we will. That's the nature of being human beings and the nature of politics. but we should not let that divert us from our responsibility to work collectively together, to collaborate together, to seek out consensus and to seek out the action that we need to take to make this the great world-class city that Auckland can be. So a big thank you from me to each of our maiden speakers today for your inspiration and for lifting us up. Let's have another round of applause for them. And I will move the motion and ask for a seconder. Seconder, Councillor Darby.
Your Worship, Your Worship, I
Councillor
wonder,
Fletcher.
in the spirit of the meeting today and your gracious words around the contribution of Councillor Lee and also Councillor Clow, whether you could incorporate that into your motion, that we acknowledge the achievements of both of those former councillors on behalf of Auckland.
I'd be delighted to do that. So we will include, it's coming up as we speak. So the contribution may, in the public service given by former councillors Ross Clow and Mike Lee, be delighted to do that. Maybe we could, public service and contribution, achievements, public service and contribution. So that's been moved and seconded. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. I declare it carried unanimously. And can I suggest that we'll take just a 5-minute break so that we can personally congratulate the councillors, and so some technician can repair my screen, which is no longer working. So if we recommence at 10:35. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I have my screen back, and if we can get councillors to resume their seats, please. Oh, sorry, that's my cover there, Stu. Right, we come to item number 12 on our agenda, and this is something that's, I know, a routine part of the re-election of both the governing body and the local boards, but it is actually very important, and I hope everybody's had the chance to read an outline of the legislation, including the Secret Commissions Act 1910. You might say it stood the test of time, but the legislation that binds us is important, and we have obligations that often go to personal liability. So it is really important that every member of the governing body is aware of what those obligations are. So I'd like to first of all welcome Danny Gardner and Meredith Webb to the table, and I would also like to move the formal recommendation that we note the general explanation of the laws affecting elected members, seconded by Deputy Mayor Bill Cashmore. And it's my pleasure to ask Meredith or Danny, who's leading, one or other, to talk to us.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Local Government Act 2002 requires that at the first meeting following the 3-yearly local election, elected members receive a general explanation of the laws affecting them as elected members. This report, the report on the agenda today, provides you with that explanation. There are a number of laws that affect you individually as elected members, and also a core legal framework that concerns your collective decision making. That legal framework we have set out for you in the attachment to the report. Meredith will very briefly at a high level give you an overview of that legal framework now. We don't propose to go through that in a great deal of detail today, given that it is in the written report, and further we had a kura kawana training session for you last week, which was very well attended by the majority of you. If there's any of you that missed that session and would like a more detailed explanation, please get in touch with me, and we're happy to have a one-on-one or a smaller group session. Before I hand over to Meredith, I will just say that there were a number of questions raised at that session last week and issues for us to follow up on, and those have all been recorded, and we are actively following up on those, and we will revert to you to the extent that they require a response. So I'll hand over to Meredith Webb, now the manager of the public law team.
Thank you, Danny. Oh, my clicker is not working. Can I get you to turn it on? That was a good... Yes, it is working. So Danny explained this. If I just move on to the next one.
Meredith, can you just bring your microphone down a little bit so we can hear you a bit more easily? Thank you.
Sure. Yes. Here we go. It's just slightly delayed. So as Danny said, just a very high level overview of these, given the presentation most of you have already attended. So we have the list up there on the slide of the laws that affect you in your individual capacity. So starting with the Members' Interests Act, that deals with any financial interests you may have. Then the Crimes Act and the Secret Commissions Act, those deal with bribes and improper financial gains. The Financial Markets Conduct Act and the NZX listing rules. Those apply because Council lists bonds on the New Zealand Stock Exchange. They prevent you from trading in those bonds and impose obligations on you if you are asked to authorise information which is being shared with the market. The Health and Safety at Work Act establishes health and safety duties for Council and for people in positions of leadership, responsibility and influence within Council, including elected members, to protect the health and safety of workers. Then we note the provisions in the Local Government Act relating to Council losses. In respect of those, there are various defences available to you, and we spoke about those at the training. We also note the requirement that the Auditor General must issue a report before such a finding can be made. Moving on to the laws that affect you collectively. First, the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act, which, as it suggests, applies to the provision of information and conduct at meetings. We then have the Local Government Act 2002, which sets out the general framework for all local authorities, including both the purposes of local government and the requirements around decision-making for council decisions. The Auckland Council Act, which establishes Auckland Council as a unitary authority and sets out its shared governance structure between local boards and governing body. The next bullet point relates to the fact that there are many statutes under which you take decisions, such as the RMA and the Reserves Act, for example, which set out their own decision-making requirements with which you must comply. And of course, the overarching general public law principles which require you to act lawfully, fairly and reasonably. So, as I mentioned earlier, this is a very quick summary and an overview in light of the detailed report and the training that we've already provided. We are, though, always ready and willing to help with any queries you may have. So if you need legal advice on any particular decision or issue, or if you would like that training in more detail, please feel free to contact Danny or I or the legal services team directly at that email address set out on the slide.
Thank you very much, Meredith and Danny. Are there any questions? Councillor Walker.
There are a few issues that I raised when we had the meeting a short time ago, and in the main it went to the relationship between the Auckland Council, and in particular the governing body, and the council-controlled organisations. And essentially the advice that I'd like is around the legal relationship, because obviously ultimate accountability rests with the Auckland Council and the governing body, even in a situation where we've got CCOs reporting to us. So my concern is, what is the relationship between us, and that is as governing body, and the various acts that apply to us relative to the relationship with the council-controlled organisations? Because obviously, if we are the ultimate authority and we have a range of things that bind us, then that binding process also in some ways goes to the council-controlled organisations. I don't need an answer to that right now, but I'm just putting on the table, Mr. Mayor, that there are some complexities that we as councillors need to get our heads around, and that may also help our relationship with the council-controlled organisations so that they have more of an appreciation of the role that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to comment on that at this stage?
Thank you. Through the chair. Yes, we did record your questions around that at the training session, and I agree that there is complexity to the relationship and the legal relationship between the council and the CCOs. There are provisions in the Local Government Act, the Local Government Auckland Council Act, and what we thought was that perhaps a specific session on that framework relating to CCOs might be appropriate, and that could be given in the context of the CCO review, if that's appropriate.
Thank you very much. Thank you. If there are no further questions, are there any comments? If there are no comments at this point, I think most of us have been through one or other briefings on this, but not to diminish the importance of it. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. Carried. We come now, thank you very much to Meredith and Danny. We come now to the Auckland City Centre Advisory Board end of year report. John Dunshay can come forward to talk to this. I'm going to suggest actually, Chris Darby, you might like to move the recommendations, and Pippa Coombe second it.
I think Pippa Coombe is actually the appropriate one to move.
Okay, we'll do it the other way around. Moved by Pippa Coombe, if you're happy with that. Seconded by Councillor Darby, both of whom are members of the City Centre Advisory Board. And it's a noting the advice in the report. John, the floor is yours.
Morena Mayor Phil. It's a pleasure to be here this morning at this inaugural meeting of the governing body, the new governing body. This report actually deals with the activities of the Auckland City Centre Advisory Board over the last term. The next report will deal with the setting up of the City Centre Advisory Board and other sector and advisory panels for the next term. The Auckland City Centre Advisory Board is a sector panel enabling city centre stakeholders to advise on how the city centre targeted rate is spent, and also advising on plans and strategies that impact on the city centre. The City Centre Advisory Board is particularly important at the moment because of the scale of investment within the city centre. I'm going to take the report as read and proceed to run through the presentation. The first slide, for those who aren't already read, just shows the boundary of where the City Centre Advisory Board activities are located, and more particularly where the City Centre targeted rate is collected from. That's the red line. You can see that the annual collection is 22.8 million, and you'll also see that the targeted rate is collected from both businesses and also about 5% from residents. Those are the terms of reference and the previous City Centre Advisory Board members. It's important to note that whilst we've talked about the City Centre targeted rate, I also referred to the fact that the Advisory Board provides a lot of advice on plans and strategies that affect the city centre, and you'll see some of those up there. And that also, it covers not only CapEx but OpEx. So you'll see that in terms of some of the public arts work, but also in terms of the work that's been done around homelessness. Again, if you look at the variety of things that have, where the City Centre Advisory Board has been active over the last term, they cover both OpEx and CapEx areas. Homelessness, we've already seen on the previous slide. They maintain an active interest in the cleaning and maintenance of the city centre and work closely with community facilities in that space. And also, more recently, they've been looking at public amenities and where they're located around city centre. They've played a significant role in championing good public urban realm outcomes around targeted rate developments. They're very active in promoting and supporting development response. They're a key stakeholder in terms of advising on the concepts of the Victoria Street Lydia Park, which is currently going through the business case process. And they've also been involved in terms of ensuring that the America's Cup legacy provides what is intended. And also, of course, there's a significant amount of investment that has been undertaken in downtown, and in addition to contributing a significant amount of the targeted rate, they're also advise and are consulted on the concepts for that downtown public realm work. We've put that slide up. I suppose the main reason for that is because it shows the spread of city centre targeted rate projects across the city centre. At some stage there was some concern that the targeted rate was being spent largely around the northern end of town, particularly in the downtown, but that shows that over the period of the city centre targeted rate, or actually not the whole period, but the period for which we have most accurate records, there's quite a wide spread through the city centre of projects. Again, that shows the same thing, but you'll see that the green bars at the bottom show that the actual spend of the target rate has fallen away. over the last few years, and particularly last year, but that there will be a catch-up over the next 2 or 3 years where the targeted rate spend goes up to $50-odd million a year, and we'll catch up on, and that money will come from targeted rate unspent to date. One of the significant pieces of work that's been done over the last year or 18 months was a review of the targeted rate and the portfolio of projects on which the targeted rate should be spent. That was a good process. We went through between staff and Auckland City Centre Advisory Board members. That shows the process we went through, and I'll now ask Jenny Larking, who's here with me, and is Head of City Centre Programs, to run through that.
Good morning. So over the next 7 years or so, there will be over $200 million of city centre target rates invested in the city centre. And this body of work, as John mentioned, has been collated in collaboration with the Auckland City Centre Advisory Board and following their advice in terms of what is important for the city centre. It plays a very important role in the revitalisation of the city centre. So the colour coding in green shows the city centre target rate funded projects. The dark purple shows the general rate funded projects, and the light purple shows the extent of the private sector investment in the city centre. The rate funds capital projects as well as operational activities. So I'm just going to very quickly take you through some of the notable projects that are underway. So one of the projects is the Federal Street program. It seeks to create a pedestrian priority laneway circuit walking routes along the full length of Federal Street. Stage 2 is being developed in collaboration with the City Mission Home Ground and creates a shared space between Wellesley Street and Muriel Drive, as well as significant improvement to the green corridor and water quality in that street. Stage 3 and 4 again is an extension of the laneway circuit that is currently in design, and we'll be looking at opportunities to link in with the future stage of the City Centre Master Plan development and improvement on servicing and accessing in these areas. For those of you who had a chance to have a look at High Street recently, we have a series of temporary intervention on High Street that seeks to innovatively engage with community in terms of the change and creating biodiversity and health and safety improvements in this street. Alongside the trials and temporary intervention, we'll be developing the design work for the permanent upgrade that's coming in future years, seeking learnings and engagement with the community through this trial process. The Nelson Street Slip Lane project is a project that responds to the concerns of the residential population in the area. So in the Victoria Quarter area is one of the densest population in New Zealand, and where this project will respond to the safety concerns and the quality of the street environment in that area. The K Road Enhancement Project, construction has just started in that area. It seeks to establish a cycleway and a green link through the K Road project. So it completes a significant cycle network that's part of the Auckland Transport cycling network. It will increase the number of trees and rainwater treatment on that street and create an enhanced pedestrian environment for the street. Myers Park upgrade is an enhancement of the Myers Park entrance. This area has been a significant area of concern for safety and aesthetic, and creates in the future an accessible entrance into the Myers Park. That's quite a crucial part for the growing residential population in the city centre. And some of the other urban realm contribution that the City Centre Target Rate contributes to is the creation of public space. So Lower Queen Street is where the City Rail Link project will reinstate once they've completed their work, and it'll be reinstated into a public plaza. So the Quay Street project that John has mentioned, the targeted rate is part funding the enhancement of that. It will create a enhanced urban realm and pedestrian friendly space for the very high level of commuters that will be in the area. And we're also working to enhance the pedestrian environment in the Bryn Mawr precinct alongside the accessibility of the new City Rail Link stations.
Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, John and Jenny. That's a great presentation, and it's great to see the progress that's being made there. Can I just throw in the first question? Quite a lot during the campaign, I got people saying that Auckland Council was far too centred on and spent too much on the centre city. And I pointed out that, 22 million plus of that a year was coming from a special targeted rate that the businesses and the residents had raised themselves. But I'm imagining with the property value in that area, that the actual contribution to overall rates in the city is very high. Do you have any estimation of what percentage of normal rates comes out of that area? It's the highest value property, obviously, in Auckland. So it's maybe if you haven't got that, maybe if you could come back to us on that. I just think that when people say that we're too city centre centric, they need to acknowledge not just the 200,000 people coming in each day, but the huge amount of funding that's raised in this area. That's 20% of our GDP. Question, Councillor Darby.
I roughly know the answer to that, but the worst answer is from a politician. But I understand from our meetings of the advisory board that the rate, and there's multiple rates, of course, in the city centre, draw in a revenue of somewhere, but over the next 10 years, between 1.2 and I think almost as high as $1.5 billion. And effectively, the revenue from the city centre will actually, there's a very healthy surplus, and it subsidises, as it should, many parts of Auckland. It's not being all spent in the city centre. But thank you for the report, our first report. In some ways, this is a procedural report, but it's very important. Can I suggest that the note recommendation, in some ways that's retrospective, it's rearview mirror, and we have been noting their advice for the last 3 years, but can I maybe just suggest a change there, that we note the advice and the recommendations and go through to comma after the term and thank the members for their significant contributions, after the comma term, after the word term. Just, John and Jenny, can you tell me, I couldn't bring up our online facility has changed, and I can't bring up the last City Centre Advisory Board minutes and agendas. Has this report, as it is written, is this the product of a recent meeting of the board?
In terms of the project and the contribution of those, where the projects are spent, yes, it is.
Yeah.
Okay. So can you just tell me, and just due to the
Microphone, please, Chris.
Of the last few months, I know that one of their most recent meetings was cancelled, wasn't it? Was that the September meeting? So we're going back to August. Can you tell me, in terms of these major projects, and if I take High Street, for example, the trial, or Access for Everyone, High Street, I thought Access for Everyone, there were two parts to the trial. There was the High Street trial, and then we moved to the Queen Street trial. Would I be correct in that I'm anticipating, we can all anticipate, a Lower Queen Street trial at some time, customs to maybe Shortland or
There is
Victoria?
I guess there is a bigger program of work in terms of the, I guess the emerging Access for Everyone strategy in the city centre as part of the city centre master plan refresh. So the High Street trial will inform and provide some of the data just to inform the Access for Everyone strategy. We haven't confirmed the exact location of the next tranche of trials as yet, but we're working with closely with Auckland Design Office in terms of identifying locations and data sets that we require to inform, and that will roll out a program of trials over the next few years.
And also with that Auckland Transport.
Yeah, so through the election, as the Mayor's just referring, we've heard a lot, and we've heard a lot in the last 2 weeks, just really excited about the High Street trial. And it is the next question that comes out of people's mouths is, when are you doing Queen Street?
Yeah.
So, or at least part of Queen Street. So you're saying that there is scope within Access for Everyone, the pilots, learn from High Street, and then the physical project of High Street, the reconstruction of High Street comes out of that, and then the thinking can be applied to Queen Street.
Yes, it can be applied to Queen Street. Yeah.
And it is likely to be in front of the advisory board to progress something on Queen Street in the next 12 months. Sorry, I'm being ambitious here. One of the new members said we're going to be bold this term.
We will definitely bring a program of work for the advisory board to consider, and then we'll, I guess, seek their advice on where is the most appropriate tranche of trials.
Councillor, I mean, I think that the purpose of the trial for High Street was to learn our lessons from that and use that as the basis for business cases going forward for a program of work across the city centre. Given the fact that there's an enormous amount of investment and capital works going on in the city centre over the next few years, I think the intention is that we consider that work as work in pulling together the program for A4E, and that where the capital works are being undertaken will inform where we start our A4E projects, and that will have to take into account consultation with AT as well, and how any works might impact on public transport movements and bus movements and things like that. So we will be taking something to the Auckland City Centre Advisory Board with respect to continuing to roll out A4E across the city centre, but we have to take into account how that will impact on the operation of the city centre.
One last one. The learnings that we take, what we get to find out about High Street, how do we convey that to beyond the city centre? How can we apply that to the consideration of how we might create better environments in local centres all around Auckland?
So we'll be sharing our learnings from the city centre and our engagement approach and the community co-design process with our colleagues through the council group, and I guess encourage them to use that opportunities to apply it to the regions.
Thanks,
Councillor Walker.
I don't think it's any secret that we've got a lot of businesses in the area that's covered by this targeted rate that are really hurting. The Albert Street businesses are obvious, but if you look around a whole lot of streets, you've got immense disruption that's being caused through things that are happening in the private sector in terms of construction, but also obviously public sector. And I hope that there's going to be some compensation for Albert Street businesses, and obviously the council should have some involvement in that process. But equally, I'm mindful that we almost need a rescue package for many businesses that are in the centre city. I'm not necessarily talking about something financial, but when I've travelled to other cities, I've seen many things that those cities do to embrace what's happening and really work with the businesses. So I'm just putting to you that certainly on my part, that's a real high priority, and even though I'm not on the particular group that's here. I think that it concerns all councillors. So it would be great to have some feedback on that particular issue. And the other issue that I think came up at a governing body meeting or a meeting that I was on not so long ago was the Dockline tram and the opportunity to take that across to Quay Street and have enhanced mobility, the tourism aspects of that. That's something that I'm interested in as a councillor, and I'd certainly appreciate some reporting back on that. Thank you.
Councillor, just in terms of the compensation, I can't comment on that. I don't.
Maybe I can help, John. I had discussions last week with the Minister of Transport, mindful of the letter given to me by a number of councillors about the exceptional hardship being suffered by some small businesses on Albert Street, and you're aware of the position that I took, which was that there should be a fund closely targeted to those that were affected in a way that really damaged their survival. It took some time to get the government across the line, but the government has come across the line, and the CRLL are now in the process of drawing up a plan which will involve a capped fund and probably a way of allocating that funding by an independent person, but working on the basis of exceptional hardship caused by the extended time the contract had taken to deliver. The government is looking at the wider sphere of disruption caused right across the country. Obviously, if your terms of reference and your criteria were too wide, you'd be talking about huge sums of money. But this money will be drawn from the existing contingency fund of CRL and won't come as an extra impost on the Auckland ratepayer or the taxpayer. So that hopefully helps you on that side of it. But John, you might like to talk about the Dockland tram.
Well, just firstly, Mayor Phil, in terms of the general point about development response, that's a very topical, for want of a better word, issue as well. So yes, some of the lessons from Albert Street have been taken on board. CRL have put in place a development response approach. There's a very proactive development response approach up at K Road, and there has for some time been a development response team down on the downtown project, and work is being done at Pleasant to bring together all those separate development response approaches into a cohesive approach to development response across the city centre. In terms of a waterfront tram, I can't comment on that at this stage. At the moment, there is significant investment being undertaken in that area. That will take some time to, that will be completed over the next 2 or 3 years, in addition to the CRL. And at the moment, I'm not able to comment beyond those works.
That's great, Mr. Mayor. I think in terms of the larger context, and again, I don't pretend to know too much, but the recent events around Sky City have also actually added to the impact on businesses. That's certainly been my observation in talking to businesses and the like. So it's really tough right now, and I just think that there's an opportunity for council to put something together that goes to this, because it's really significant, and our ability to respond to something like Sky City or the like in terms of the impact on businesses, movement of pedestrians and the like, I think is a bit of a wake-up call, and I don't think that we've woken up yet.
Sorry, Councillor, this is a question session, and so I've got a couple of other people wanting to ask questions.
I guess what I'm saying is I don't need it right now, but I think we've had some massive events recently that we need some reporting to us on in terms of how we've responded to those events, but also how we're going to respond to future events. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Filipaina.
Thank you, Worship, and tēnā kōrua. Look, I just wanted to have a look. I've gone through the PowerPoint and listened to it. Where are the recommendations from the Auckland City Centre Advisory Board that are asking us to do anything? Because when I read A, it's got note the advice and recommendations provided. So I'm trying to find out what they want from us, if there are any recommendations, and whether I can have a look at them. Because I'm looking through the, sorry John, but let's look through the PowerPoint. It gives you updates on the, Myers Park underpass and everything else. It's just to say, look, here are the objectives, here are the key risks, but they're not sort of saying, hey, we want more money or we're going to do this. So are there any recommendations that have come out of the report from there? And if so, what are they?
Councillor, there aren't any recommendations. It is a report on the work of the Auckland City Centre Advisory Board over the past term, and particularly how the targeted rate has been spent and what other work has been done. In terms of dealing with further requests for how money might be spent or recommendations on how money might be spent, those are taken to the Finance and Performance Committee, and the Finance Performance Committee approves that and has approved the City Centre targeted rate revised program as shown here.
I think maybe in light of that answer, Councillor Darby, I'd just like to, if we took out the and recommendation, so it's advice and thank the board members, I think that would be appropriate given
Want me to
the answer.
clarify?
Sorry?
They have, this is about a 3-year term. It's not about today. It's not about advice and recommendations today. It's looking at, this is a report of the 3-year term. And it's about that period, and it's about acknowledging the advice and recommendations that have been brought over the 3-year term. The Planning Committee has received extensive advice. The Finance Committee has received recommendations on the targeted rate.
Yeah, I think the problem I still have is that I don't have the recommendations in front of me, so I can't note what those recommendations are. I can note the advice that we've received here. I don't think it's a big deal. It's only a noting report, but it'd be better take on board that you've no doubt absolutely true that they have made recommendations, but unless we've got it built into the report we have in front of us, it's hard for us to note it. I think that was Councillor Philippine. So if you don't mind, if we just...
I'm happy to take it out.
Okay,
if
thank
you
you.
were true to that, you'd take out the word advice, because we don't have their advice for us of the last 3 years either. But look, just let's move on. Take the word and recommendations out. But there have been.
No, that's good. Thank you very much for that. Councillor Watson.
Just a specific question on one of the projects, the entry to Myers Park, which seems to have been around for a number of years now. There has been some inquiries by some of the property owners there as to the timing and the potential disruption of that project. And sorry, I didn't quite pick it up in your fly through. Is it still at the planning stage, or is there a definitive start date and a time of construction that we can go back to these people with?
It is at the planning stage, and during the planning stage we'll be, as the design evolve, we'll be in contact with all of the surrounding property owners to keep them updated of the anticipated construction and disruptions.
Thank you. Are there any comments? If not, I'll move... Sorry, there are comments. Councillor Coombe. Oh.
Kia ora. So I still just had a question about the report, if that's okay, Mr Mayor.
Yep.
Thank you for the report. I just would like to, it's great to see some of the projects that have been around for a long time finally coming through, like the Myers Park underpass has been going since 2011. So I really hope we can nail it in the next year. I did have a question about Quay Street enhancement and whether there's been any further update on extending the enhancement further along Quay Street, or is it still the same package of work that was advised last term?
It is. So currently the Quay Street enhancement project goes from Hobson Street through to I think Commerce Street. There is no further funding to extend it any further than its current scope.
Thank you. Councillor Casey.
Oh, it might be small in the scale of things in terms of budgets, but I want to congratulate the advisory board on addressing homelessness, the 2.6 million, the upgrade of the James Liston Hostel, and the 600,000 for the outreach programme. I think that's an extraordinary commitment, so it's just great to see. Thank you.
Kia ora.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Hills.
It was just a brief comment. Are we on to comment?
Yeah, we're on to comment now.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just a brief comment. This is fantastic, but we will obviously be ramping up a whole lot more the next 3 years. I think there are a huge number of projects which are coming together, and the Quay Street and Waterfront area are significant to that. I do hope that we move faster or see more work on the linear park. I know people are waiting desperately for that, and I think although it was extremely unfortunate, the closures around Wellesley and other areas because of the convention centre fire showed, within a couple of days how behaviour change and actually prioritising buses and people to the areas they need to be actually did change that area because we were forced to. So there is some ways around, and what Quay Street has done too, that the significant change around traffic through there, obviously not at first, but long term. The other thing, I was at a Women in Urbanism meeting last night, and I know we talk about it a lot, but I think we need to be ensuring that all our projects, especially in the city centre or the first leg, last leg around public transport, we're looking more at safety and more at well-lit spaces. I know last year we had a problem outside the courts, which took us 6 months just to get lights in that area, but when construction is happening, when things are moving, when we have large hoardings, I'd love to see a lot more thought given to all people. And I know the teams are doing an amazing job at that, but sometimes it's not quite there. And someone with a disability or someone who might feel afraid to be walking at night at 9 or 10 o'clock and everything has changed and it's much darker, and it can be quite overwhelming for people. So I think when we're doing this rapid change, and it's fantastic and exciting, but we need to keep people safe. And also it only takes a couple of times for people to have a bad experience to never want to walk down there. They jump in their car, they'll park outside the city or taxi and spend a whole lot more money because of the safety around. So I think there's fantastic amount of work being done, but I think we need to make sure we're keeping on top of that the whole way through, so our city is accessible during this time, but also in the future. So thank you so much. This is a really exciting piece of work, and I thank everyone who's been involved with it. So thank you.
Thank you very much. If there's no further comment, I'll put the resolution, but just to congratulate the team on what's happened in High Street. The picture you put up on High Street showed just how appalling the congestion is, both on the road and the pedestrian area. And going down there with Councillor Coombe and Darby, all of the feedback was really positive about the changes that were being made, and it's great to see us move forward in that direction. So the resolution's moved by Pippa Coombe, seconded by Chris Darby. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Carried. We come now to item number 14, which is the setting up of the advisory panels. So I'd ask Carol Hayward and Marguerite Delbay to come forward, please. I am happy to move the resolution. Maybe Councillor Casey, you'd like to second that. The resolution deals with the re-establishment of our demographic advisory panels, our sector advisory panels, and the updated terms of reference. So, Carol or Marguerite, one of you might like to lead off on that.
Tēnā koutou, good morning, Your Worship and councillors. The advisory panels were first established in 2010 to ensure that the views and needs of Auckland's diverse communities are heard and incorporated in the council's decision-making. Each term, the panels have been evaluated to inform changes going into the new term, and I'd like to thank ReMove for their work that has informed the proposed changes set out in this paper. Key findings during the evaluation were that the panels provided valuable input into key strategic planning and policy documents. They provide us with opportunities to build unique relationships with our diverse communities, and they are well supported by liaison councillors, lead officers and deputy lead officers. However, there are improvements that we could be making going into the new term around building the sense of team with the panels at the start of term, helping them to understand their role when they are appointed, and thinking about some of the challenges that are now facing us as we go into the fourth term. For example, around the having a sense of when do people when should a term, how long should panel members stay within the council family? There are also some challenges facing us around the Youth Advisory Panel and thinking around the super diversity of Auckland, and some of those are in the recommendations too. So recommendations that have been made within this paper include to reduce the size of the Youth Advisory Panel and to remove the geographical connection. To ensure that the panel can receive views from across the region, the intention could be that we facilitate connections with local board youth voice panels and other youth leadership groups to ensure that diversity of views is heard and to create strong networks across Auckland and a recruitment channel for the Youth Advisory Panel. One of the other recommendations with respect to the Youth Advisory Panel members was to increase their remuneration in line with the other panels. The Youth Advisory Panels work as hard as all of the other demographic panels, and the intention is to recruit them at a strategic level so that they can continue to provide that strategic advice at the same level. With respect to other panels, the Ethnic Peoples Advisory Panel, we are looking to think about the different skills that might be required going into the new term. For example, to support the development of guidelines on how to engage with minority ethnic panels. But a very key point is to try and increase diversity across all of the panels. For example, within the Pacific panel, there is a heavy Samoan influence, and we're looking to try and reduce. Try and broaden that.
Just remind who beat the Australians at League on Saturday, just to bring people's spirits down a little bit.
Looking into the new term, we're considering what things that the panels might get involved with, and climate change is a key area of concern for the council, so it's something that we could be referring to during recruitment. The improvement of our engagement guidelines is another area of focus, and thinking about that ongoing connection with the Auckland Plan's belonging and participation outcome. For the sector advisory panels, the feedback from the evaluation was that the rural and the city centre were working very well and needed very little change. One change to the report that's in front of you that has come through since the paper was published was that we do not now recommend a change in the way that the chair of the Auckland City Centre Advisory Board is appointed, and we wish to continue, we recommend continuing with the same process that it is selected by members of the board annually. The Heritage Advisory Panel is one of the panels that did get some feedback during the evaluation that wasn't working quite as well as we might have hoped, and we recommend some changes going into the new term. I consider it a little bit of a hybrid. It's partly community representatives and partly experts on the panel, and so thinking about that in terms of the way it works, the changes that have been recommended are partly in line with that, and thinking about how that panel might work going forward. The workload is likely to be lighter than some of the other panels to start with, so thinking that it might meet less frequently and look at some new voices coming into the group. The other change that we're suggesting across all of the panels, apart from increasing diversity, is also to increase the Māori representation. At the moment, all of the panels state a recommendation of at least one person with Te Ao Māori experience, and we're suggesting doubling that for all of the panels, apart from for the Pacific and Ethnic. I think that's it in a kind of a nutshell. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much. First of all, questions from councillors. Councillor Walker and then Councillor Coombe.
Sure. So I've taken a particular interest over some time in the Heritage Panel. I've attended a number of the meetings and spoken with a number of the members on the panel, and I'm certainly aware of their frustration, which stems from not having an effective conduit to council. And then the other frustration is the absolute loss of heritage that we are experiencing across Auckland, especially important parts of our built heritage. So I've got particular concern around the notion that they actually meet less. Yes, you're absolutely right. We don't have the unitary plan as such an issue. Having said that, the flow-on effect from the unitary plan is that we are losing heritage, and we have any number of developers that are really pushing the envelope. So I certainly haven't had feedback from them around meeting less. The feedback that I've had is it's vital to have continuity, it's vital to have a conduit, and that needs to be regular. So I just want to put that up there. But the other changes certainly are desirable, and I would note that having people that are representative of community but also experts, I have found to be excellent, and excellent in terms of governance, because these people know their stuff. In fact, some of them know their stuff phenomenally well. So I'd certainly invite some response from you around that, and then I have another question.
Councillor, I'll start with your questions around a conduit to provide advice. One of the recommendations we will make in the terms of reference for the new term is that the sector panels be attached to the planning committee, so it provides that conduit the same way the demographic panels will have that conduit to the community committee. And of course, it doesn't mean that if they want to provide advice on things that another committee are considering, they can do that as well. So that will provide that avenue that you are asking for. I'll let Carol respond on the frequency of the meetings.
Through you, Chair. The frequency of the meetings, I'm certainly happy to reconsider that. At the moment, they have been meeting by every 2 months. The concern from staff was whether there would be enough content to manage that number of meetings, but going into the new term, if we're looking to broaden the scope of the heritage panel, or to consider the content that it may be able to cover, then we may be able to find sufficient to keep it running. One of the other changes that we've proposed with the heritage panel is that we can get we've agreed some more communication support, so that we can actually use that as an opportunity to promote heritage issues more strongly with the community and through the council publications.
Councillor, second question.
Sure. The second question is about the panels that we've got. I've been an advocate, and certainly was an advocate in the first term under Len Brown, to have an environment and climate change panel. We don't have any panel, we don't have any representation from the community around those issues. And consistently I've advocated that these are some of the most important issues that we need feedback from the community on, especially climate change, but equally environment. So we have, for example, a rural advisory panel, heritage, nothing around the environment. I would suggest that that could use some consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Coon. Microphone, please.
Thank you. It was good to hear the update around the change of recommendation around selecting the chair of the City Centre Advisory Board, because I know they've worked very effectively in terms of selecting their own chair. So when we refer to the updated terms of reference, I'm just struggling to find where it's referenced. So in the report it says the recommendation is that the mayor selects the chair, so that it is on the agenda, that the updated version. Just if you could just give me a page reference, because I'm just want to be clear on what the updated terms of reference are.
It's not in the published papers, so it will need to be in the revisions agreed today. So the wording that was used in the last term, which we'll make the changes after today, was the chair and deputy chair will be elected by the members of the board at a board meeting for a term of 12 months, and thereafter annually at a meeting determined by the ACCAB. the chair and deputy chair may be re-elected, and then the 3 elected members on the board are ineligible to be appointed as chair and deputy chair. So that's
The updated terms of reference?
that could.
No, the intention was to reflect the decisions of today in the terms of reference.
So just to get clarification of that, we're reverting to the status quo where, as you've read out, the members elect their own chair, because I don't agree with the fact that I should appoint the chair, should come from the group. It's a question of how that's reflected in this paper, so that somebody reading this paper isn't under the misapprehension that we're changing something that we're not. So if you can give us a recommendation on how that would be reflected in this paper, that would be helpful.
Okay, well, we can craft a recommendation just for you to vote on, to say, agree that the appointment of the chair of CCAB remains unchanged.
Okay, we'd add that to the recommendations that we're voting on today. That might clear that point up for you, Councillor Coombe.
Thank you.
If I may make a comment, Mr. Mayor and Councillor, my understanding is that it has sometimes been difficult to appoint the chair and the deputy chair of the board, just because people are really busy, and so the fact that we don't change the appointment process doesn't preclude the board to go and appoint an independent chair if they wanted to.
But the starting point is that they can organise themselves.
That's right.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you. Important to clear that point up. Councillor Fletcher.
Oh, thank you. And I have asked this question of you before, but with the disability panel, to what degree are they working with the disability group that was established under Auckland Transport? So have we seen a sort of hybrid model emerge there? Because obviously the issue of accessibility for our disabled community is really important across the board.
The disability, we don't have any formal connection with the Auckland Transport, public transport group, but the chair of the Disability Advisory Panel also sat on that group. So there's no formal link at the moment. I have been in discussion with Auckland Transport, who are looking to renew or re-recruit for both their public transport and their second community panel, to look at how do we connect more strongly going into the new term, and how do we in particular reach through our networks and help increase the diversity. So they were particularly interested in younger disabled people to go onto their panel. So at the moment the relationship is informal and just trying to strengthen it going into the new term.
Thank you for that. Your Worship, I would draw attention to the fact that we have an opportunity for that work to be streamlined together in some way. I don't want to take further time on that. The other is I share Councillor Walker's concern over the Heritage Panel. In the evolution of the unitary plan, there was much discussion about pre-1944 in the absence of doing an individual survey of properties that might be noteworthy in terms of heritage. Some of that work has been undertaken and some of it has stalled. I would have rather thought that there might be an opportunity for more of a workload. Would it then require a change in the terms of reference for that work to be undertaken?
The terms of reference currently refer to meeting 2 to 4 times a year, so we could change the frequency of meetings. But I think we also we do talk about so we could change that. That's the main thing.
I think, when we look back at issues like Ihumātao and so forth, and this is going right back in the life of the council, but we were looking for heritage advice when the special housing matter was put before the council, and I think that there is a role that the Heritage Panel could be providing that is unmet at the moment. The third I was going to just touch on, which has been raised already. I believe that much of the good in terms of environmental outcomes, Your Worship, is actually being undertaken by not-for-profits. So if we are to be serious about the strategies that we want to put in place in terms of the environment and climate change, and I'll be guided by the Chair, Richard Hills, on this, I think we do need, if we're going to derive the benefits of these panels, we do need to be working with the not-for-profit sector more effectively. And I wonder whether it's through a panel that we could achieve that to get some representation of the work that is already being undertaken, or whether it might be through some other avenue. Is that a consideration, Carol, that has been given to, where the evaluations that you've been undertaking, that there might be a need for working more effectively and collaboratively with our not-for-profit sector?
It's not come through in the evaluation at this stage, no.
Again, I don't want to occupy the time of this, but I wonder, sir, whether you would give some further thought to that, because I think it is a really splendid opportunity where the council could be working with our environmental groups and volunteer not-for-profits.
Be happy to do that. I think there's 3 points, Councillor, you've raised that we'd like our team to come back on. One, just the connection between our disability panel and the transport disability panel, and it might be by at least 1 or 2 members in common membership, but I'm happy to look at any other way. Secondly, heritage. I think we'd got to the point in answer to Councillor Walker's comment that maybe if we go back to the every 2 months, and if it proves that there isn't a workload, then we can make the change. But of course, it's a bit like committees around here. If we have a lesser workload, the meetings go more quickly, although sometimes Parkinson's law does cut in. And the third one, I think Councillor Fletcher has raised legitimately, is let's have a look at how we link in the not-for-profit organisations' role with the environment. I think it's a good point. We need to give some more thought to that. You might like to feed in to officers on that, Councillor. Thank you. Councillor Henderson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I have a question about the Youth Advisory Panel. So I note that in terms of your proposal to reduce the number of panel members and remove the geographic locations, it says here reducing from 21 to 13 and making that ward-based. Can I ask you why that was not adopted in the response?
The geographical connection has come through very strongly through the evaluation as being a confusing part of the youth panel in particular. All of the other demographic panels are being recruited on a regional perspective to provide advice at a regional level. So the recommendation from officers has been to remove that geographical connection to reduce some of that confusion. The challenge is that if they, the feedback we've heard from youth panel members was that they don't quite know how to connect into their local area or whether they're representing the area and what their role is, and it's really confused their role. So it's really about saying we want you there from your own lived experience. When we do the recruitment, we will look for the geographical mix of people, but it's been a little bit less prescriptive.
I understand the issue coming from the local board perspective, and we butted against this as well. But just a follow-up question, Mr. Mayor, thank you. How would you ensure geographic diversity if you're not requiring it? It seems to me as if the ward level might be something that might be a better idea.
Again, reflecting back on the other demographic advisory panels, we don't specify, we don't look for that geographical mix. We're looking for diversity within the panel, but we want to try and make sure that we are reaching beyond those who are just in the city centre or just in a particular urban area. So it's not, it will just, as we do the recruitment, through that recruitment process, the liaison council will be part of that process to help us get the right mix. So it's really about looking for the opportunities when they come, reaching out to those groups and networks when we do the recruitment. So we will be working with the local boards as part of that recruitment process and just thinking about how do we try and reach those different communities.
Thank you. Councillor Simpson.
Thanks, Your Worship. Could you please just explain to me a little bit more about the recommendation that wants the panels to retain the community engagement budget but remove the expectation for the panels to deliver community engagement? So keeping the budget but not doing the work. Sounds a bit Irish. Sorry, not Irish.
Be careful who you're insulting there.
Sorry.
So the panel members during the evaluation raised their confusion, or they really didn't understand what their role was in terms of community engagement. I think they felt an obligation to run community engagement but didn't know why they were doing it. So going into the new term, we're just trying to manage expectations a bit better. We want them to have a role in community engagement, but we don't expect them to organise it is one of the key things that we've struggled with. They've ended up organising their own community engagement activities, but also if they're working, we're trying to kind of make sure it's more streamlined with council activities already. So if the council is consulting on a policy around a bylaw around tattooing again, it's how do they work with the panel, not expecting the panel to run that community engagement on their behalf. So the funding is there to support that process, which is why we recommend that we keep it. But we want to try and make it clear that it's not an obligation for them to actually do all the running for those sorts of activities.
Supplementary. So you've got quite a lot of staff support, and I'm just kind of interested, again, from a budget perspective. The budget's there, so they won't be organising this engagement themselves, but the staff, they'll be working with the staff who currently will be part of a wider engagement that they will link in with. I'm just trying to, I'm still haven't targeted why we're keeping community engagement budget for the panels if they're actually going to link into existing engagement that would be obviously budgeted from a different source.
So just to give you some examples from the last term, the Rainbow Communities Advisory Panel commissioned a piece of research called 3 Questions, which helped to gain perspective of the Rainbow communities to help guide their thinking. The Pacific People's Advisory Panel used their budget to run to get media coverage to run their community events. So the couple of events have taken place this year. So they're a couple of examples. If we're working in partnership with council teams, then there will be some support, but there's not guaranteed support to do that go beyond the normal ways that we do things.
Thank you very much. Councillor Newman.
No, Councillor Henderson asked my questions and they were answered.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments? If you look up on the screen, you'll see the 3 recommendations that have come, formal recommendations that have come arising out of the discussion. We come to comments, and Councillor Casey, as the overlord. Yeah. You might like to comment on it. And can I just take this opportunity to thank you very much for your passion, enthusiasm and hard work on this area.
Well, it's that I want to talk about, not mine, but the work of the panels themselves, the staff who support the panels and the liaison councillors. Now, I was unable to attend the wonderful end of term event because I got punched in the head in Mount Albert on my way in, but that's another story. It was the start of a bad few weeks. So I didn't get to that, and I want to say today what I would have said at that, which is it's an extraordinary, for those councillors who take part in this process over the next 3 years, it's an extraordinary family that is our advisory panels. It's a wonderful opportunity to work alongside volunteers who've given up their time to come in and help the council and give them advice. And I think it's the 12th of November we'll be announcing the liaison councillors and the new overlord. And just that, it's the staff who do the support work on top of their jobs at council are to be commended. The lead officer, the deputy lead officer and the admin people. We couldn't do the panels without your work. And the councillors who take on this additional role, again, it's outside of your meeting times, but I would like to hear maybe from a couple of them, if you wouldn't mind just saying what you felt as the liaison councillor in the last term. I think the wider council should know it's not just about giving advice, it's extraordinary relationships we build with these vulnerable communities, in that we become familiar, much more familiar with the needs, their needs that they bring to the council table, and that's really what this is all about. It's about making visible the vulnerable communities that don't get the chance. So I'm hoping that Josephine might say something to start us. I hope you don't mind me chairing the meeting, Mr. Mayor.
This is a takeover. No, that's fine, and it was a really great event, and we noted your apologies at it for reasons that we probably didn't go into details at the time about. But I'm happy if others want to comment. I've got Councillor Filipaina, who's already got a place on the speaking list. So, Alf, if you'd like to make any comments.
I won't. I'll leave that to the other councillors. I had the two advisory panels, but everything in the review has been noted. I just want to acknowledge Dr. Dina and Dr. Jessie from Urimu for your report and also for asking me to have an input in regards to this. Your Worship, and I want to talk about the youth panel and the recommendation in regards to the numbers. I personally don't want the numbers changed. I said this at the beginning of the last term. I've spoken to my two local boards, and I also take on board what Councillor Henderson was talking around geographical. I know they are regional, that the advisory boards are regional. But when you get a situation where some may end up not coming from the south, whether it be Franklin or whether it be the Manukau ward, I really don't have much hope in the fact that the voice around that area, if there's none from the Manukau ward, for example, is not heard. If we're looking at a regional youth advisory panel, and then we then get to a point where through the selection, and we don't know what's going to happen through the selection, but if we get to a point where some of the vulnerable areas that people have been talking about end up being missed out, I really don't have any hope around that voice being heard on the youth panel. And this is why I've always advocated, as well as the two local boards that both Councillor Collins and I represent, this is why they've always wanted their representation from the individual local boards that they represent in the Manukau ward. So, Your Worship, I am not going to vote for the 13, and I see in the report that it's in brackets that it's on the ward basis. So I mean, just want to confirm then that if obviously I'm not going to put another recommendation up, that I'll leave that for the debate around whether the youth panel stays at 21. And I've given my reasons on many occasions why I believe it's 21, because you do in fact get the region. But Your Worship, if the majority are going for the 13 as per this recommendation, well, as my late mother always used to say, go with the flow, son. So look, Your Worship, I truly believe that the only way we can get representation across the region is to have now at the 21. I truly believe that, because we may not be represented in the next 3 years as a result. So look, Your Worship, totally agree, and I just again want to acknowledge the two doctors who did the report, but I will not be voting for the 13. I'll just put my vote against it, but still 21 for the youth panel. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. I might just ask Carol or Marguerite to come back on that issue. In all of the other demographic panels, I don't think we have, but correct me if I'm wrong, we have any example where we have overwhelmingly them coming from one area. That would defeat the purpose. You're quite right, Councillor. But I think we have managed in our other panels to get that proper geographic representation, and that's not the only factor, but it is a factor. It would be intolerable, for example, as you and Councillor Henderson have said, if either the West or the South wasn't involved, and probably the East and the Central would say the same thing. I know that the representations, the submissions, or the recommendations, I should say, have come after a long period of consultation with the panels themselves, with the stakeholders, and the review of REMU. And my personal view was that 21 was big, and 21 encouraged people to think as not as regional reps but as local reps, and I didn't think that was desirable either. And it also made it hard in terms of your budget. You know, I think the Youth Advisory Panel members should be paid the same, but if you're paying, you know, was it $250 a meeting or something for 21, you're putting a lot of resource just in attendance, and I'm not sure that you're getting what we want from the advisory panels, which is a cross-section of views from people that are the best placed to be appointed to those panels. But just as I consider Councillor Filipaina's comments, if maybe our staff could comment on that and the reason why we came to where we did. At the moment, we're 21. One consideration was 13. I think the existing recommendation is 8, if I'm correct. So maybe if you can just clarify that point.
So, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation is 8 to 12. One of the issues, well, there have been several issues with the number of young people around the Youth Advisory Panel. The first one is they do need more pastoral care, I would say, in terms of helping them provide advice. And so the ability to, there's an element of coaching and development that goes with them being on the panel as well, which our staff provide, which is different obviously from the other panels. And just being able to provide that care and that support to 21 young people has been more difficult. They have told us themselves that they find that having 21 people around the table makes the discussions and the decision making more difficult. It's just a big group, and one of the things that we considered is whether we should separate them in 2 or 3 groups so that they could actually have a better chance to participate. And with that reduced opportunity to participate comes sort of reduced commitment from them. So the commitment of some of them was probably not as strong as we would have hoped, but it's that feeling that they can contribute meaningfully, which I don't think was always there. Certainly for a young person without chairing experience to chair effectively a meeting of 21 people and sort of articulate that advice, it's been more difficult. So I think we can definitely ensure geographic representation through the recruitment process. The idea of a ward representation just gives that, but it doesn't mean that it needs to be necessarily one-to-one, but absolutely making sure that it's diverse geographically, as well as some of the other sort of leadership roles that those young people might have had in their experience and in their communities.
Thank you very much. I've got no other call. Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Thank you, Councillor Casey, for suggesting I speak. So I'm the liaison councillor for the Disability Advisory Panel, and I completely agree with your comments, Councillor Casey, about the richness that the panels provide. It gave me completely different perspective being amongst the panel and hearing their issues and hearing what they have to go through on a daily basis, which I think is going to be valuable for all councillors going forward. I also think that the way that the panels have been set up to react and respond to advice in our policies is good, but then there's so much leadership that we're missing out on, and hopefully that will come through in the next term, because it would be good if we weren't just asking them for advice, but actually responding and letting them set the agenda of the issues they want to see addressed and how council can get in behind and support those issues. So that is my feedback. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bartley. Councillor Collins.
Thanks, Chair. I really enjoyed being the council liaison for the youth panel in the last term. I've been listening carefully because whilst I guess my impression at the end of the last term was that a smaller number of youth panel members was the way to go. I heard very clearly, particularly from the youth panel members who came from the south and a couple from the west, that they wanted to see are the numbers left the same? So I'm trying to weigh out the discussion at the moment. I wonder though if the numbers, because I agree completely with Councillor Filipina. I wonder if the numbers of 21 isn't such an issue if we look at the way the meetings are conducted. And I found one of the challenges to be that we all sit around either this table or big tables downstairs. I often found it as just a refit of how we govern, how we meet. And that's not the most conducive way to get the best out of young people. At times we would, break up into little groups, but the meeting structures are very much the same as what we have. You get officers, they present to everybody. We're in a large group. They're moving very quickly through an agenda. They only have 2.5, 3 hours together. And granted my background in youth development, I never found it to be the most effective way to garner reflection from them and their input. And so I would have to agree. I don't see the numbers as being the issue as long as the meetings are conducted and trained in a way where they'll be able to have some input. One of the things we did in the last term was we had like an overnight stay with the young people where we all got out. We went out to the marae in Point Chev, or just over here somewhere, and it gave them the opportunity to be together. The challenge was they couldn't all be there, so that's always going to be the ability to get people there. But I'm confident that if we are to vote to keep the numbers at the same as what they are, that the structure of the meetings are such that will really encourage their feedback. And I think we've got to look at some of the way TSI run, and how you have the stickers, because the chairing and all that can happen, but it's not. I think we're just trying to mirror the functions, and that for me has been the issue. Thanks.
Thank you. Maybe if I can just put a question back, and thank you, Councillor Collins. I think there's some interesting material in that, but to you and to Councillor Casey, I'm just trying to figure out what the argument is for treating the youth panel differently from the other demographic panels. Because 21, I think, Councillor Collins, you started off with the point that you had the impression that the smaller number was the way to go, and I listened carefully to that. It may be that we, if there was a worry, we've got the assurance about geographic representation, but if there was a worry, we still have the ability to take it up to 12 in this case. But is there a case for dealing with the youth advisory panel differently from the other 5 panels? That's the real question I've got in my mind. Councillor Casey, have you got any thoughts on that?
For me, the essence of this change is to break the geographical link between the young person we're selecting for their lived experience and networks and the fact that they live in a certain part of the region. And, at the panel, the members have their name and then their ward or their... And there is no link. There is no link between the young person representing us on the Youth Advisory Panel and the fact they live there. And so whether it's 21 was representing the 21 local boards, 13 is the wards, I'm suggesting 12. So there's no link. And it's up to the liaison councils will be on the selection panel. So it's up to us to select a good cross-section to represent the youth of the region. So I think it's really important that some local boards have their own youth panels. And you can imagine if you're the young person representing Albert Eden and they also have a youth advisory panel, it's like, what is my role relative to them? I'm very clear. The role of the youth advisory panel is for the governing body of Auckland Council. They give us advice. We raise the visibility of their issues and try to help them. So it's a creature of this chamber, not a creature of the local boards. And I think that's what I want to see in reducing the number to whatever, to break the geographical link, but make sure we've got a geographical spread.
Thank you. Look, Councillor Newman.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And the discussion's been interesting. I mean, 3 years ago, we had the recommendation that stemmed from the Martin Jenkins report, and actually we decided in the end to go with the 21 members of the Youth Advisory Panel, and I voted for that. But I've listened carefully to the arguments and read the report. Also, having been a member of the Seniors Advisory Panel, I know that it's perfect. I think it's perfectly achievable to have geographic representation, notwithstanding the fact that there isn't a requirement for representation from every part of Auckland, because the skill sets and the lived experiences Councillor Casey is reflecting is something that is inherent to the selection process. So I'm happy to go with the recommendations from the officers, and would expect that the interview and appointment process will be mindful of the fact that there is a need to ensure a diversity of lived experiences, which will probably reflect, I would imagine, some geographic spread. But I reflect back on the last term. I do think, I'm not quite sure ultimately what the constituency was that the young people were representing for the 21 areas. I think that we did want to have the lived experience that they could offer, and that wasn't necessarily dependent on their postcode. It was a part of it, but it wasn't essential. And I would imagine that the selection process will address that need if we go from 21 down to 8 to 12, wherever the number might ultimately fall. And I do think that there is an issue around resourcing and remuneration. For 21 people, that is a lot of money. That's a lot of money, and it is ratepayers' money. So I'm happy to go with the recommendations, and I would imagine that this will be a matter that the officers and the liaison councillor will continue to monitor. But I think that the decision taken last time was probably not the right one in hindsight, and now is an opportunity to address that.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. I was on the liaison council on the youth council the time before last. For me, I could support the recommendation if we would really focus on supporting local boards and having a youth council, because it's really inconsistent across the region, and I think that's where the local is really important. Those young people that are living in those areas know what the issues are, have the networks, and they can actually, with support from the local board, can actually affect change and positive things happening, and they can be informed by that. It probably is a little bit lost having local board or ward representatives around this table, because it is a tricky thing. You're not asking them to do projects, you're asking them to give advice on our policies which shape the way we create Auckland for our young people. And so that's at that level I see the Youth Council, and I don't think we've used it for that enough. I think that should be our focus for the Youth Council. I do think there's got to be some geographical considerations when you're choosing a panel to advise the governing body, because people's experiences are quite different. Not the one that can do the best speech or, goes to the nicest school or whatever, or can get here more easily. I think we've got to be careful of that. But I do think it would be maybe better to do, I've sort of been here and there listening to my colleagues and going, yeah, that'd be great to have that. But I think you want a smaller and more effective bunch, because I've seen what happens. 8 people can't come this month. This is happening with exams. This is, and you don't get the full body anyway quite often, which is quite sad because they don't get to participate. I think, I just wondered what we could put in place for local boards to really support having the development of a fully functioning youth council in their own area.
Thank you, Councillor. Look, Councillor Filipaina.
Your Worship, I know I've spoken, so I'm not going to speak again, but I got a question of clarification.
Sure.
If that's okay.
Yep.
In regards to what Councillor Newman said, and he mentioned how much it would cost for the current number, And if we ended up reducing it to, say, 12, and the cost is still going to be the same if it was 12 or 21 in regards to payment, is it?
No.
Isn't it, apart from the increase that you've asked in here? So that's the first question. What they're currently getting, the Youth Advisory Panel currently getting, I know you've asked for increase, but if there wasn't a request for the increase, would that the payment still be the same if there was 12?
So the proposal to increase the remuneration of the Youth Advisory Panel to put it at the same level as the other panel, that increase gets compensated by the decrease in numbers. So there's about between $30,000 and $40,000 extra if we were going to keep the number of members at 21 and pay them the same as the other panels. So if you reduce the number and increase the pay, it basically balances out.
Yeah.
If you increase the pay but don't reduce the number, you had another $30,000 to $40,000.
Yeah, on a quick reflection, I think the argument is important that we pay the young people the same. I just regard that as discriminatory that we pay them less. But if we kept their number at 21, we'd be spending 2.6 times more on the youth than we would on any other panel, and that doesn't seem to me to be fair either. So.
Yes, sorry, Your Worship, that's the reason why I've asked the question in regards to the number staying at 21, for us to pay the same amount as what the other demographic panels would be are receiving. We've had to increase that so they're on parity. So, no, look, this is why I wanted to ask that question on clarification. Thank you.
That's a fair point. Look, I'm having listened to the conversation and not having any particular axe to grind on the issue, I'm going to make the assumption that the majority of people are in favour of 8 to 12 rather than 21. But if anybody would like to have a show of hands just to indicate views of councillors, I'm happy to take that. But otherwise, I'll put the recommendations that we have at the moment on the assumption that 8 to 12, with the guarantee that we'll get fair geographic balance. I think that's probably where the majority of members are sitting. So I'm going to make that assumption if you're comfortable with that. If you want to have a separate vote on it, I'm happy likewise. Councillor Darby.
Just a small point unrelated to that. There's been some discussion. I've had this discussion with you, Mr. Mayor, in the last couple of weeks with Councillor Hills, now the chair of the Environment and Climate Change Committee, Councillor Coombe, and Councillor Walker mentions it as well, is the importance of elevating our discussion and seeking advice on climate change. Now, I'm not sure, I don't think it's appropriate right now to land a decision that we have a climate advisory panel. We've got the climate action framework out for discussion with our communities. I think that we just need to identify whether we proceed, and I think it is likely that we do proceed with a climate advisory panel that is the product of that feedback and our consideration of the framework. But I guess I'm just reinforcing some of the discussion here and highlighting it at this point that we need to go back and look at that. We do have an advisory panel now. It's just not visible to us.
Exactly.
It's a panel that is to support our staff, and it's done a great job in shaping up the framework. It probably needs to be looked at, maybe enlarging, but rather than try and scope it now, let's park it with the Chief Executive to bring that back later on.
Thank you, Councillor. I concur with that view. We have got a panel, and I can't tell you that it's had any visibility. That doesn't mean to say that it hasn't been doing anything. It is reporting to staff, and what we'll want with the new Environment and Climate Change Committee of the Whole, I think, is a greater visibility of how we can feed in information. I've had this discussion with Councillor Walker, actually, how we can feed in information from that community. So if I can accept your your suggestion that we should park it but continue to look at it and try to find the most effective way of engaging with the community, I think that's a good way to go. Look, I'm conscious of the time and the fact that we don't have lunch today. My apologies. It was a short agenda and the decision was taken that we'd finish by lunch. So I think we're almost there on this thing. So what I'm suggesting is that we vote on the recommendations that we have there. It's been moved and seconded. So all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. Carried. And if you want to distinguish, councillor, that you're not in favour of the youth panel recommendation but support the rest of it, that's probably the best way to do it. Yep. No, thank you very much for that. Right, we move now on to item number 15. Marguerite, if I can ask you to stay exactly where you are. Thank you, Councillor Walker. You've jumped the gun just a little bit, but I will accept your motion to move it. This is the standard thing that we do. You know, when we finish have our last governing body meeting in December, and the Council does not sit as a governing body until the beginning of February. If something comes up that's not so urgent that we'd have to call a special meeting of the governing body, then we delegate the decision-making authority to 2 of 3, Mayor, Deputy Mayor and a Chair of the committee. So it's been moved by Councillor Walker, seconded by Councillor Collins. If there's no questions or comment on that, I'll simply put the motion. All those in favour... Jump the gun again. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, no. Carried. Marguerite, you're still there. Item number 16, governing body meetings. The proposal was to have another extraordinary governing body meeting next Tuesday to discuss the new committee structure, membership, and draft terms of reference, I think, are going out to councillors on each of the committees today. So, I'm happy to move that we confirm hold an extraordinary meeting on Tuesday, the 12th of November. I have a seconder from Councillor Cooper. A question. Let's take the question. So, Councillor Collins.
Thanks, sir. This is looking forward to this discussion. I was wondering if at this discussion we'll be able to table ideas or some discussion on the timings of meetings when they start.
Yep.
Would that be the right place to have that discussion?
Next week would be, I know that's been raised. If you can foreshadow maybe to Marguerite what you have in mind, Councillor, that would be very helpful in terms of getting an informed response from our council officers. Marguerite, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, just a comment, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it would be useful to get your views before this, because at the next meeting, what we will propose is the calendar. And I don't think it's going to be practical to make changes there and then. It's quite a logistical exercise, so we probably need to do that before the meeting.
Thank you. And I saw another hand go up somewhere.
Oh, that was mine, but Councillor
Exactly the same
Collins
point.
has asked. So it's about the timing. It's all of those issues around how you might have recesses. How we conduct the council timetable looking forward. So I'm happy to contribute to that as well.
I think the discussion would be useful. We started it informally the other day, and I think there was a view, for example, that Fridays keeping free for constituent works, but at the same time, at the meeting on Monday, we probably recommended a whole lot more meetings as well. And councillors will have got the email from me arising out of Monday's meeting about the nature of the oversight committee and membership and voting on that. Okay, so I'll put if there's no further questions or comments, I'll put the recommendations to item number 16. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Carried. Item number 17 was consideration of extraordinary business, and there was no extraordinary business. So I once again congratulate our maiden members on having given their speeches. That includes Shane as a maiden. Not sure how that description fits, but great speeches, and thank councillors for getting through the agenda today. I declare the meeting closed. Just about to declare the meeting closed. Councillor Fletcher.
I don't want to in any way take away the importance of what you've just said in terms of the magnificent speeches, maiden speeches that we've heard today. But I wondered, in terms of extraordinary business, at what point you might come back to us formally as a governing body on the implications of the fire at Sky City, because that has raised a whole range of issues for us in
Yep.
planning sense going forward. Was it your
I'd be
intention?
very happy to do that at the next meeting. We can probably put it on the agenda, actually, rather than just have it as extraordinary business. So a report, which I'm happy to contribute to, having been involved in how the matter was handled, but I think we should get a report from our civil defence team that worked all the way through that process on how that matter was handled, and we might need to build into that a report on whether it might be premature, but whether from Fire and Emergency New Zealand there are lessons that we can learn from how they had to cope with what they told me was the most difficult, the most complex and the hardest fire that they'd had to fight. So if I can refer that to the Chief Executive, and we'll put that item, I think it's a good point. I thought about that during this meeting about where it might be appropriate to discuss it, but next week would be a fine time to discuss that. Okay, thank you very much for that, and declare the meeting closed.